I am very, very pleased to say that we, as our first guest on our kind of new podcast meeting, whatever you want to call it, is Sarah Jones. Emma's obviously giving you the facts, but yeah, I'm really pleased it's Sarah because we went to the same school together. I was the best hockey player that they had, and then Sarah came along. And secondly, we play for Wales together, and it's been personally for me amazing to see her journey within sport and competing for Wales and Great Britain. So, further ado, welcome, Sarah. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. And what a lovely introduction. Thrilled to be having a chat with you. And I don't disagree. I think you probably were the best hockey player in Howells. So yeah.
Well, there we go. There we go. Listen, today's chat, we're going to kind of go around your journey on and off the pitch. We're going to talk about some issues that have been brought up along the way. And we'll kind of sometimes go back and forward and be in the present a little bit. But like any good story, I kind of want to start at the beginning. And little Sarah Jones, back in the day, I kind of want to understand what your kind of first memories of sport and those first feelings of playing sport as well.
Yeah, I think I can probably express the feelings more than I can express, I guess, the facts. I grew up in Lisbane, for those of you that don't know, which is a town in Cardiff, and I grew up next to a football pitch, which was basically the dream because I got to spend every living moment that I wasn't in school kicking a ball around either on my own or finding someone to play with. And I loved it. I loved everything about playing football, how, the competitiveness of it, and just, yeah, being able to just play. It was always just about playing.
And obviously, I know that you have a sister as well. I'm just wondering what your parents thought about a young girl playing sport, because let's be frank, back in the day, we are kind of 80s and 90s children. You were called, people who played sport were called tomboys, etc. How did that fit within your family dynamics as well?
Yeah, you're right. My sister was very different, thank goodness, to me. The only, I think, involvement that she had in football was when she used to put on dances for our parents. She used to get me to do football movements as the choreography. I think that was really our only crossover in football. But my parents were both very sporty. I would say in kind of the traditional sense of like wanting to be outside and just do anything that kept them active. But were both very encouraging of me playing football, playing sport, but really just doing anything that made me happy.
It's interesting you talk about football because back when you were younger, I mean, if you look at Welsh football, it was only in that period that the Wales women were being identified and celebrated as international themselves. So I'm wondering, why football?
I don't really know. I remember, I think literally growing up next to a football pitch probably had a lot to do with it. They say accessibility is everything, and maybe that was just the easiest thing to do at the time. I think men's football was obviously very widely on TV. I really, really loved Gianfranco Zola, who was a Chelsea player who was really, really small, and I think I felt a little bit a kinship to him. And I think, to be honest, a lot of it was seeing boys play football, and it was always boys that I was playing with, and wondering if I could be as good as them. And I think a bit of it was always trying to prove boys wrong as well, because I think the attitude was always, oh, that's a girl and she's not going to be very good.
How did you get on?
How did I?
How did you get on with the boys?
Oh, I think some of them really well, most of them really well. I joined a local team called Lisbane Panthers. They played in orange, which was an interesting choice for me, but you can't do much when it's your local team. And it did take a little bit of time, I think, to win round some of the boys and maybe some of the boys' fathers as well. But I remember, I think I was maybe 9 or 10, and I was awarded the player's player for which is when all the team vote, and I just remember being so proud of the fact that the boys had voted me as their player's player. I remember that being such a, yeah, I was just so proud of myself and maybe of the team as well. And that was when I was like 9 or 10. So it took a bit of time, but I won them round.
Did you have any aspirations of, playing sport? Did it even cross your mind that you could do it as a career?
No, absolutely not. I think you'll know as well, at that time, both in obviously in primary school, but even in secondary school, to say that you wanted to be a female sports person as a career was just so, just an absolute, like just like dream. I think the career counselor probably would have turned around and said, okay, but what about being an accountant or a lawyer? So it was just completely out there. And I think even the fact, even sport wasn't even seen on par as, I think, other hobbies, arts and music, things like that were probably seen as more of an elitist hobby than something like sport, especially something like football that was very much seen like a boys or men's sport in those days.
I'm wondering, did you in school have to go through that career thing when it would like tell you at the end what was yours?
The army, and I bet yours was too.
I was in the army, and I definitely wasn't because I'm not that organised. But I can see you been in the army. I think mine was a PE teacher, which I think was. I think they probably went, "There's nothing for her. Give her the sport." The army. Did that ever? Did you ever think about the army?
I think there's so many similarities between being in the forces and being in sport. I think that kind of disciplined, regimented, and they are things that I really enjoy about being a full-time athlete. I kind of, there is a lot of things that are taken away from you in terms of being able to do your own thing, but actually that's something that I've always quite enjoyed as well.
So, career in
Maybe,
the army
maybe in
next.
another life. Maybe in another life.
So, obviously, football was kind of that first sporting experience. I'm wondering where hockey came into the journey.
So hockey came in secondary school when I went to Howells. When you were there, I think maybe you were probably in your later years when I was in my
Thank
first year. But
thank you for letting everyone know
yeah,
how old I
yeah,
am.
I just wanted to get that in there just so everyone was aware. And I just played every sport that they offered. So netball, lacrosse, hockey. They didn't offer football, and I think that was probably part of the time that that football kind of went down the wayside. But and all the summer sports as well. I think I enjoyed the range of sports. I don't think that love that I had for football when I was younger really kind of really came until I went to university.
Yeah, so I mean, for you then was up until the age of 18 was hockey just a hobby?
Very much, and I would say it probably was a hobby that I wasn't often hobbying. I think it was a kind of a now and then. The PE teacher, Mrs. Jones, who you all know, used to kind of run around looking for me at school because I hadn't signed up to say that I wanted to play that Tuesday after school at Talabon or whatever. So I don't think I enjoyed it, but I didn't see it as part of my life, as part of my identity, as something that I really wanted to spend my time doing. I think I was busy just being a teenager and doing all the things that life throws at you then.
I mean, we'll flash forward to Olympics later, and we'll definitely obviously talk about the in between. But does that in your mind think, oh my goodness, how on earth did I do that? Given the stories we know about Olympians, especially, and being a Welsh athlete in Team GB, those journeys, sometimes you're hearing athletes starting at the age of 9, 10, but really you didn't start until you went to uni. And then that's
Yeah.
a story and a half as well, which we'll get on.
Yeah, and I think you'd probably see that in my technical ability in hockey. That's where it falls down, and that's why people start playing sport from a younger level. But I'd like to think that some of the key things that come out in my hockey playing in terms of an ability to work hard and want to play and play and play. I think whilst I didn't hone them in hockey, I think I probably did in other sports. But yeah, I definitely agree. It's quite a shaky start to yeah, an elite sporting career.
And where did Wales come in? Because you obviously did you play age group Wales stuff?
I did a bit of it again, not a huge amount. And I remember always being hugely proud, even at age group level when I played for Wales. But it was just so ad hoc. This is it's 20 years ago. It was just so kind of as and when things happened, I kind of be like, oh yeah, that sounds like a nice idea, and then it would kind of just fall off the radar again. As you can probably tell, not a lot of thought really went into what I was doing week on week.
So let's fast forward to your first cap in 2011. I think it was the March against Scotland. So apparently I played in that game as well. I have to say, I can't remember your first cap, Sarah. But what I will remember, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying this, is that you were playing for Loughborough Thirds at the time.
Mhm.
And obviously, for those who don't know the story of Welsh hockey, it's a bit like any other sport in Wales, kind of, you get to pay to play. The training was on weekends. You'd often have no physio. So we went off to Poland to play in this European tournament. And I remember I'd actually done my training, but you turned up. I think we could safely say probably not at your fittest, playing for Loughborough Thirds. I remember thinking, well, at least we've got the numbers. And I
Well,
gotta be honest, if you told me then you would have gone to 2 Olympic Games and won an Olympic bronze medal, I would have gone, well, how on earth did that happen? So let's start there.
how on earth did that happen? Yeah, I think throughout my sporting career, I think I never really had the big dream. You know, when you hear young people now saying, "Oh, I want to go to an Olympics, I want to go to a World Cup," um, that those things weren't there for women. We didn't see women on the TV, we didn't see them in the media, we didn't see them on social media. We'd see a random FA Cup game final, and we'd see an Olympics every 4 years. So I think that kind of big dream wasn't there. And so for me, I think it was those really small incremental, can I be that good? Can I be that good? So yeah, so when I played in Loughborough threes, I thought, well, okay, I'll try and play for the twos. And when I kind of achieved that, can I play for the ones? And can I get my first Welsh senior cap? And oh, look, that person's quite good. Can I be as good as them? What can I learn from them? And then it was, GB development team. And it kind of just went on like that. And I think an element of that is that big dream, you can't be what you can't see thing. But also I think maybe a lack of confidence as well. And that's something that I've kind of learned along the way. Absolutely being able to say out loud, I want to be an Olympian, or whatever it is that you want to do. I don't know if I had the capacity to do that when I was in my 20s.
Well, you got your first cap in 2018, so that's 7 years. I can do maths. A 7 year journey. I'm just wondering along that way, when was the realization that actually, okay, I need to take this seriously?
I think probably, yeah, probably at the start of that, when I getting that first Wales cap, I think then it was kind of like, I want to do everything I can to leave the Welsh shirt in a better place than it is. I think that was the drive then. And then as I got better and I got into a senior position within in the Welsh team, and I kind of used to play club hockey against other GB players, I used to then think, oh, okay, well, I wonder if this is an opportunity. If what can I do for my club team, and if I can compete against these people week in, week out, maybe a shot at GB is on the cards. But that still felt very far away, and doing that with a full job as well was probably the most challenging bit.
I was going to say as well, that being a Welsh athlete, you have that kind of added pressure of having to, pay for the more, rent and everything else. I'm just wondering about, for those watching, whether this in sport, business, what were those small steps? I mean, what did you have to do extra that maybe someone else who was an English athlete didn't?
I guess this sounds really silly, but it's those really, really small things that you can do daily. Consistency when you want to achieve big things, I think, is probably the most critical thing. You can have those big dreams, but you have to show up every day. It can't be, in sport or in life, it can't be, oh, I'll just do something, like every week or every month, do the big thing. It's those really boring daily routines of packing your sport bag the night before, of preparing the food, of doing the things that you don't want to do, of watching the video, of every single time you turn up at training thinking, I've got 2 hours here to learn, from the people around me, from the coaches, and ultimately from myself. I think it ultimately is down to consistency, and that's true when I was trying to become a full-time athlete. But crikey, when I became a full-time athlete, that was probably the most important thing, that consistency piece.
Um, I'm just wondering as well, because the history of Welsh hockey players being in the Great Britain team. I mean, you can literally count on one hand. I think Sarah Thomas is the most modern kind of example of that. She won bronze in 2012. How did it feel then getting that call to say, okay, well, GB are interested in you? How did that go?
Yeah, I think even the process of that happening felt very incremental and in small steps. So after the girls won a gold medal in Rio in 2016, there was a huge group of us trialing, and even being invited to trials at that point. I think there were 3 Welsh people out of 60 odd that got invited to trials, and that felt like a win. Then I managed to get a part-time place. I was only one of a few that got part-time places. The rest got full-time places. So even then it was like, okay, great, I got a part-time place. How am I going to get a full-time place? Balancing a part-time normal job with playing hockey. And then getting a full-time place, and then finally getting the opportunity to actually represent GB. Even that process took 18 months. So, and just that daily turning up and being like, I can do this, I can do this, even fighting against people that were in a full-time program and probably getting generally more opportunities than I was. But yeah, that first GB cap felt like a huge win.
Being part-time, full-time, do you agree with that process? Because that sounds to me like it's stacking up against you.
It is definitely tricky, and I think it was a vehicle to have more people involved. And if it was the choice between being part-time and not being on the program at all, I would always pick being part-time, and that might be the way that some women's sport is for a while. But it's now something that they've abolished. So and I think that's rightly so. I think you need to be compared against those that are yeah, that you're all on the same training program. But taking a positive around it, it definitely made me more resilient.
And we'll talk about on the pitch and that kind of GB cap as well. But I want to talk about coming into a very English environment. For those who aren't aware, Team GB and England, and well, they live in the same building. The funding pots are almost identical. Obviously, they'll go into different areas, but a lot of the time you'll see England and GB hockey. Did you feel an outsider coming in as a Welsh athlete, and how did you process that as well?
Mm. I think th things have changed a lot in the last 8 years. I think taking it back 8 years, when I started on the program, it felt very English, and that's a very difficult situation when England is the host nation for GB, and like you say, they live in the same building, have all the same coaches. It is a very difficult. It's very difficult for them to operate in that space, but everything down to whenever we were presented to, it would say England hockey in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. Things like that used to really hurt. Everything from that to singing what is in my eyes, the English anthem. It is the Great British Anthem, but we've grown up hearing "God Save Our Gracious Queen King" as the English anthem. So standing on the biggest stage in the world and singing an anthem that feels more English at the start, 8 years ago, than it did British, was really difficult, and it took a while to come to terms with.
Did you sing it fully, the
Oh
anthem?
yeah, I will always. I'll sing out. Any anthem that I'm given. Does the Irish anthem sometimes get a little tune from me? It does. But no, for everything that was done to get there, I was absolutely belting that out. And the way that I feel now about that anthem, given the however many caps that I've sung that for, I feel very differently about. And that's been a real change for me to feel Welsh and British. Before then, feeling British almost felt anti-Welsh, and it's something that I really had to wrestle with throughout my career. But I think how we've developed as a GB women's squad throughout the last 8 years, and having a Scottish coach and having a captain that really champions being an English, Welsh and Scottish setup, has really helped me and identify, I guess, as Welsh and British.
It's cultures colliding, isn't it? how did you ensure that the Welsh culture was present every day in that training environment?
I think that comes down to what you can give to the culture. And I see being Welsh as being wanting to get stuck in, working really hard, being a leader through actions. And that's what I did, because that's my identity and I associate that with being Welsh. Um, so that's kind of what I tried to bring to an everyday training environment. And I and other Welsh people and Scots, I think, have really set the tone for that over the last, certainly after over the last couple of Olympic cycles. But that was, very much helped by the glass ceiling that Sarah Thomas and other Celts would have pushed through before me.
Listen, we're going to park the GB thing. We're going to go back to Wales and the Commonwealth Games. Now, that was my biggest target as a Welsh athlete. I knew I was never good enough for the Olympics. So the Commonwealth Games, nearest thing, I never made it. I was very jealous to see you guys go off and compete. But bringing back to Welsh identity, why are those Commonwealth Games so important? Knowing, again, next year in Glasgow that, hockey won't be appearing for Wales.
Yeah, I think the Commonwealth Games is obviously a multi-sport event, the biggest multi-sport event that Wales could compete in. And it also allows para athletes and non-disabled athletes to compete side by side, which makes it so special. Being able to be part of, we're lucky because we get to play team sport, but being able to be part of a bigger team, to be part of Team Wales, and to celebrate being in the village when someone comes back from weightlifting or from bowls, coming back and celebrating a medal all together. There's just nothing really that compares to that. Unfortunately, you don't actually get to sing the national anthem at the Commonwealth Games, but we always sang it in the changing rooms before, which I think in a way is even more powerful, because we all came into a circle, and being able to see each other's faces before going to play the old enemy was pretty special. So those things, when competing at a multi-sport games, I'm sorry that you never competed in it, because they really are the best.
Thanks for rubbing that in. How much is, you're still, obviously you retired from Great Britain, but you're still competing for Wales. How are the girls feeling about not being able to go next year and compete as Wales at Commonwealth Games?
I think it's really difficult because, like you say, for a Welsh athletes, that is the pinnacle. I think it was really important for the Commonwealth Games to go ahead, and in a difficult situation, they've found a solution. And sadly, hockey, won't be in that, and you can understand the reasons why in terms of numbers and what sports frankly need to be an event like that. But nonetheless, it is really difficult for hockey, because especially hockey in Wales, we need that platform to encourage sponsorship. And it is a real shame for those girls that haven't competed, and also for those girls that might have been almost the end of the line. That's always the one that you're reaching for.
What was your favourite Commonwealths?
Australia was incredible because you got to recover in a swimming pool outside. But I have to say, Glasgow in 2014, it was the first thing that I had experienced of that scale. And I think the Scots did an incredible job of putting it on. And the volunteers were fantastic. It was the first time I'd experienced a food hall, sensational. My family got to be there and see this enormous tournament. So yeah, 2014 Glasgow.
I have to admit though, that game against India in Australia, Tash scoring, I think it was 2-1 the final score. The first time you'd ever beaten, was it 2-1 or 2-0?
3-2.
Oh, well, there we go. That's my memory. Listen, forget about the scores. I was there with Matthew Pinson recording, and it genuinely was one of my favourite moments in sport, because everything that we were fighting for as Welsh athletes, as women athletes, to kind of be recognised within Welsh sport. Are those moments, despite everything else you've achieved, are those kind of small moments important to you?
Yes. And I think because of how much you've gone through, and because those people are some of my closest friends, I think that's why they mean the most. I recently, went to Rose Thomas and Phoebe Richards's wedding, and that's all we're reminiscing about is those goals that we scored, those saves that we made, how we hung on for 60 minutes to beat India, Tash scoring like a diving reverse. Those are the things that you live for because because they're your friends, and like you say, because of the history of a lot of losses and a lot of bad times. So to have those memories, it's just so special.
My favorite quote that I've made up myself, and I'm telling my child and nephew, is it's not how you win, it's how you lose. And I tell them with a caveat, we've lost a lot of time with Wales.
We really have. And I always put that positive spin on it. I think it's something that my mum says as well. That's what makes you, isn't it? That's what makes you. And it's true, you learn so much from losing. You do. But also, sometimes it's nice to win.
It's definitely nice to win. Right, let's flip back to Great Britain. 2018, you got your first cap, but there was a personal sadness, can we say, about that day?
Yeah, so the very day that I got my first GB cap was the day that my sister got married. I only found out maybe 3 weeks before that I was going to be selected for, it was a Champions Trophy in China. And my sister was getting married in the Cotswolds, so there was no way that I was going to do a mad rush from one to the other. And because I hadn't been picked for anything for so long, I assumed that I wouldn't get picked for this particular tournament. But when I was told that I was going to be picked, there was kind of no uncertain terms in my head that I had to go, because what if this was the only opportunity I had to play for Great Britain? And that had been the dream for so long, just to get one cap. And luckily my sister was, as she always is, totally supportive of the situation. And sometimes I look back on the photos and think, God, that would have been really great to have been there. But I guess those are some of the challenges in life, and and I think we're better for it.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because we talk, athletes all the time talk about sacrifices they make and families make, but also there's a journey your family go on with you, and the moments that you can give them, which are unique to not many people, or they're unique to many people. I'm just wondering about how they felt following you on this incredible journey as well.
I think what I'm really lucky to have in my family, and perhaps this goes back a little bit to the fact that I wasn't absolutely sport mad in my teens, is they've been supportive, given the fact that I've now played hockey for a very long time. They know nothing about hockey, but they just want to desperately support me. But I truly feel that whatever avenue that I had gone down and whatever avenue I continue to go down, they will support that. And that sounds really basic, but actually for parents and caregivers out there, I think it's a really important thing to provide that support, that kindness, that love, and help them do the things that they want to do, but try not to put too much pressure on, because I think that fundamental I continue to have with my family. I feel very lucky.
Did the fact as well that you were having to work, having a career with Wales, did that help you maybe understand that there is a life outside this hockey world?
Yeah, I think it's really important, because I think a lot of people, we're very, very lucky to be funded by UK Sport and to have full-time jobs through the National Lottery. It's an incredible position to be in, but it does mean that people often go, usually the route is through university and straight onto the programme, and so often don't have that kind of wider awareness of life, if you like. And it's something in recent years that being on the world class program, they're more aware of. And there's a lot about dual aspirations and dual careers to kind of broaden I guess, the vision a bit, to get a bit of understanding about life and trying to get experience, so that the transition away from sport is easier. But I think having a real job before going on the program really helped to appreciate it. And even the last couple of years of my career, I had to kind of remind myself of those times that you're doing all those sessions before, during, after work. It's a privilege.
And going back to that first cap as well, what was your first memories of being there, going, okay, well, this is kind of the thing I've been dreaming for? Could you absorb that moment?
Honestly, no. And it's something now that when girls are getting their first caps for Wales or GB, I say just try and take a moment in the anthem or in the warm up, because you're going to have so much in your brain when the whistle starts. I don't remember a single thing from that game. There's actually a picture of me completely miscontrolling the ball, so I imagine it was a catastrophe. But no, I don't remember anything of the first Wales cap, or, to be honest, of that first GB cap. And it's similar with milestones. You're so in it, and hey, that's why we play sport, isn't it? Yes, the milestones are incredible, but when that whistle goes, all attention is on what you're doing. And so it would be nice to have, a little memory of looking at a teammate or appreciating the national anthem or something like that. But to be honest, I'm too busy running around that I don't remember.
Well, you've got 73 caps for Great Britain now, so we can understand how they all merge together. Off the pitch, in terms of Great Britain hockey, obviously you were coming back off that amazing gold in Rio. I mean, I think we can all remember where we were when that happened. But actually, GB hockey, you weren't doing too great as a team overall. How much pressure did that put on you as well?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one when you come off the back of a gold medal like that, such a historic win. And actually, people see you as champions. And to be completely honest, we weren't. The majority of that team, over half, weren't gold medalists. They weren't even Olympians. We were just trying really hard to do our best. And so I think understanding the identity of a team after success is really important. And I think we understood that, but I think blocking out that external voice that was saying, oh, but hey, it's 3 months out from the Olympics and you're not beating Ireland, was, it can be really tricky. And that's, some of the reasons why we really lent on our culture, and coming off social media, things like that were really important.
And I distinctly remember, and I don't want to say that I'm Mystic Meg for those who are old enough to remember who she was, but I remember when the 2020 Tokyo Olympics got delayed, I remember saying something, this will change GB hockey, having that extra year. Talk us about that process of building up to that massive, dream, to then being told it's delayed, and your process within that as well.
Yeah, so for me personally, it was a bit of a lifeline. So when the Olympics was delayed, our coaches online decided to sit us down, and they told us whether we would have been selected for the games had it gone ahead. And I was told that I wouldn't have been selected. So I wouldn't have been in that 1 to 16. I would have been 17 to 24. And so I had a year to change their minds, to improve and to learn. And I think that was a real turning point, to understand that I guess I couldn't work any harder. That's kind of what I'd been doing for as long as I could remember. I could not work any harder, but could I just be a bit smarter, really, really focus on my strengths, but also just change a couple of things in my game? Not hugely, you can't do a huge amount in a year, but just have a little bit more confidence in myself and in my strengths. And that's ultimately all I did between 2020 and 2021. So yeah, it definitely had a personal impact for me. And I think you're right. I think on a team basis as well, we really benefited from that year. We were the best physically prepared team for Tokyo. What we did in terms of preparing for the humidity and the temperature in Tokyo, we had like individual almost greenhouses that we trained in with bikes and temperatures, and that's ultimately, I think, what won us a medal, our physical capability, because we could run any pitch there off any team there off the pitch.
Sorry, I know I want to go back to that moment when you weren't told. How did that feel? I mean, was it weird? Were you relieved, like angry, not angry, but I guess disappointed? How, you tell me.
I think those messages are incredibly difficult. I think anyone that's been in sport and not been selected for things, it's really hard, because sport is something that you're deeply, deeply passionate about. And so to be told that you're just not good enough is really hard. But I think taking the emotion out of it and just really concentrating on what they're trying to say, which is, you've got some really good strengths. We just need to tweak a couple of things. If you just take the message out of the feedback, then, that's a lot easier to say than to do. I think that's what I tried to focus on in that moment. And also, I had a year. That's, a lot can be done in that time. So yeah, I think that's what I focused on. I think being optimistic, glass half full. And frankly, at that point, I had nothing to lose.
Yeah, and what were those strengths? I'm interested to know kind of what were they, and was was that any imposter syndrome still seeping into you about maybe, okay, is that enough?
Yeah, yes. I think the strengths are, I mean, not to get too hockey technical about it, but a lot of the off-ball stuff. So, and that sounds really silly, because people who don't play hockey will probably think, what can you do off the ball? Well, 95% of the time you're spent, off the ball in hockey. So, things like pressing and leading and making life hell for the opposition is essentially what I was good at. Being the absolute fittest that I could possibly be. And I guess the tweaking things was then take confidence from when you win the ball to just a little bit more composure of what you can do to then create something. And I guess that's the things that maybe changed in that final year. But yeah, I think imposter syndrome and lack of confidence definitely played into it. And those things take a long time to change. And yeah, and that would probably be the growth in, I guess, from that 2011 first Wales cap to now.
What do you remember in the process? I'm not, talking like a Monday or Friday, but when that changed for you, when you thought, actually, no, this is my effing spot and no one's going to take it.
Yeah, I actually think probably a couple of months out, we played some games against Ireland in Bisham. And Ireland, for me, were kind of like that dream opposition, because they're a bit kind of, they're a similar style of hockey to me. They're a bit scrappy. They work hard for everything. So actually going against them and getting that real battle was almost like what I thrived on. And so yeah, I think that might be the moment, which probably was maybe the April before the Olympics.
Okay, so the Olympics is pushed to 2021. Fast forward, you got told you wouldn't be in the squad. I want to know on that day how it felt when you got told you were.
So my mum came up to visit me in my house, because I knew that I wanted to be with someone, and her, really. So she came up, and she was actually sat in the opposite room, and we received the news by email, to ensure that everyone gets the message at the same point. And you'll get an email and it will just say the list of names that have been selected. So it won't be you've been selected, it will be this group has been selected for Tokyo Olympics. And it's just such a frantic refreshing of emails. I think it was coming through at 2 p.m, so it's very long in the day to wait. And it came through at 2 o'clock, and and my name was on there. And it's such an incredible feeling. But I have to say it, and now having been through that process twice, it is quickly followed by the disappointment for people that aren't on that list. And that's yeah, that is the same for any major selections, Commonwealth Games included, that I've ever been involved with. The absolute jubilation and joy that you feel for yourself, it is kind of counteracted by that disappointment for the journey that I know other people have been through. But yeah, nonetheless, very excited.
Did you think you felt even more because you knew what it felt like the year before, that it could have been so easily like the other way?
Yeah, yes, exactly that. Yeah, and knowing how in elite sport it is, it's fine margins. And yeah, totally knowing that. So that means that maybe I took someone else's spot, is really difficult. Yeah, and I swing between being really sad to that is elite sport. That's what happens. Only 16 people can represent your country.
What was the swing? Do you know who had gone the year before and who didn't?
I don't think it really, because we have a couple of people that play between lines, I don't think it was quite, thankfully, as simple as that. And I think, to be honest, that was probably what also saved me, was that I've always been a midfield/forward. So that ability to play across lines, I think, probably played into my favour as well.
All right. Well, you've done your kit, getting your kit, you're off to Tokyo. I mean, what was the disappointment for you knowing that your parents and family couldn't come and watch you as well?
I think I probably didn't truly understand that disappointment until Paris Olympics, because I was so just one track mind about doing all the right stuff, about being absolutely on point, and about our preparation. And also because during those times in COVID, we were all living such individual lives that I don't think we truly appreciated kind of the impact that had until afterwards. So yes, I really was disappointed, and obviously standing on a podium and looking up to an empty stand is disappointing. But ultimately, you're there with the people that have helped it happen, and you're there with your staff as well, which, and in a way, I actually think that played into our favor. Not having people there, not having everything that goes around the Olympics, which makes it a complete joy, I think played into the strengths of our group.
Okay, you're in the Olympics. You score a goal. How did that feel?
Yeah, that was, for those of you that have ever watched me play hockey, know that I don't score very many goals. So scoring in the opening game against Germany, the first goal, I think it was, yeah, I mean, it was a tap in. But
Come on.
yeah, let's not concentrate on
You're in
that.
the right place.
We're in the right place, correct. And I think it was incredible, because we'd had this really turbulent time kind of literally up until the Olympics. Even in the practice games, we had lost badly. We'd lost against I think Spain, and they'd literally just got off the plane. Like, things were not going well. And those first 5 minutes against Germany, a very solid, consistent team, suddenly we all just turned up, and we were like, oh right, great. And then the goal went in, and we were like, oh God, this could actually be something. And that sounds so silly, because things in elite sport are so regimented, and so how could you possibly turn it to a tournament and feel like that? But that's how it felt.
I remember speaking to Susie Townsend after who'd won gold in Rio, and she said the bronze, despite it being bronze, it was equal to it because of the journey that you've been on. And that's so cliche, but during that tournament, when did you allow yourselves as a team to think, right, there could be a medal here? Or was it literally when you got the medal?
For me, it was literally when the final whistle went. And those are the kind of things that you
India,
learn, I think.
it was against India, wasn't it? For those who don't know, and it wasn't an easy game.
It was not. It started off very, looking like we were doing really well, and then India very much came back and made it a very difficult match. But until that final whistle went, I don't think, I certainly didn't believe, and I don't think the team believed that we could do it. Yeah, it was excitement, but it was relief when that final whistle went, and I was gobsmacked that we had done it.
I mean, how do you even kind of get around the fact that you're not, you've gone from this journey, Loughborough thirds, Wales, Great Britain, Olympics. Now you've got yourself an Olympic medal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's wild, isn't it? And I think it makes me think of all the choices and those daily things that I spoke about to get there. And it kind of sometimes it does give me a bit of an imposter syndrome, because I kind of think, well, but things could have been so very different. But perhaps perhaps they wouldn't have been. Perhaps all choices would have led me here, or perhaps they would have led me in a different direction, but they would have been, just as special in a different way. But it is a bit odd. The medal is just sitting in a cupboard, and sometimes I just get out and look at it. Usually, when I'm taking it to see some kids or something like that. But it is very bizarre that you just have this thing that feels like so much.
And obviously then fast forward to Paris, which was a kind of a opposite end in terms of just the way that the tournament went. Your own journey, you were in and out of the squad with injury. So, this journey's gone like this. And then, you reach the peak, Olympic bronze medal. Then suddenly you realize, okay, this is maybe not as easy as I made out or could have made out even.
Yeah, I think interestingly, the journey in terms of our performances with GB, as mentioned, before we got to Tokyo Olympics, weren't that great. And that kind of continued beyond in the Paris cycle. We were probably knocking around, 6th to 8th in the world. And that's ultimately where we ended up. And we got to a quarter final, and when we got to the quarter final in Tokyo, we beat Spain on a shootout very, very narrowly. And this time we got to a quarter final and we were drawn against Holland. And those are the margins. And I think, ultimately, if we were being really true to ourselves, our standards across the full 2 cycles that I was involved probably wasn't in top 3 positions. It just so happens that in Tokyo, things went really well, and in Paris, they didn't. And I think sometimes it's really hard to be that simple, and you can reflect on so many things that went wrong or so many things that went right. But ultimately, that's kind of how I feel. And if you flipped it round and you said, got knocked out in the quarterfinals in the first Olympics and then got a bronze medal in your second Olympics, it would feel like a very different story. And I think that's something that I need to remind myself when I feel disappointed in our performance, is that, the differences in elite sport are really, really small. And that's how I reflect on that.
I'm just wondering as well, into, you're 34 now. When did you make that decision that you would retire from Great Britain?
I think there probably wasn't one moment, but I think throughout the last few years of, like you say, a lot of injuries, and injuries that probably are due to the way that I play hockey, and due to my age. It's probably not something that I can get away with for another 4-year cycle. And I think the thing with being Welsh is that there isn't anything in the GB setup for 2 years. I think if I was heading towards a World Cup, then maybe I'd try and cling on for another 2 years. But it certainly has felt like this has been coming for the entirety of this cycle, I would say.
And did you have chance at the end of the Olympics in Paris to kind of go, do you have an inkling that this could be your last couple of matches?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As in, I think I've been, preparing for this for, a year easily. And I think, there's a few of us, the retirements that have come out publicly since that knew that would be it. And in different ways, we were supporting each other and taking that moment in, after we lost in the quarterfinal, just doing a little lap around the pitch and looking at my family and friends in the crowd and just appreciating the fact that they were there to see actually a really good game against the Dutch, but also, my last game. And you have to, things don't always, end on an absolute high, but being able to go out on my terms, to retire on my terms, that's a privilege in itself. And to have family and friends there to experience that is lovely.
Yeah. And we're going to kind of keep it within the hockey theme, but we're going to talk about kind of the activism around it. When we search your name on Wiki, there's a nice little, inverted commas, openly gay.
Openly gay.
Which I quite like. I just want to talk about actually being a woman in sport, being part of the LGBTQ family, how that's kind of how that relationship has been, and what it's meant for your overall well-being as well. Because as we know, not everyone gets to be open and safe being LGBTQ within the world, and how has sport helped that?
I think, firstly, in hockey itself, as you will know, it's it is very inclusive to be a lesbian in hockey, and I feel very lucky to say that, but also very aware that that is not the same for yeah, all people in the LGBTQ community, and certainly for those, you know, outside of hockey and, you know, in sports such as men's football. And so I feel very lucky that I got to have that, you know, even from a very young age when I joined Cardiff Athletic and I saw, you know, all these out women, you know, just enjoying, you know, just being out. And I was like, wow, this is okay. Well, this is great. And the same when I went to Loughborough University, it's always been a very normalized environment. So yeah, I feel very lucky to have that, but also aware that it's really not the same for those outside of hockey, or certainly those outside of sport.
Now in Tokyo, you took the knee, part of the BLM movement, but as we know, hockey, especially in Wales, and I would say probably in the UK, is a very white middle class sport. I think the numbers went down slightly for Paris, but I think over, well, I mean, I think 50% or 40% at least of the medal winners went to private school. How does that sit with you within your own values as well, knowing that it is at the moment for one particular type of person?
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think even those that did win medals, I think were mainly in athletics as well, which I think is very telling. Um, I think to be inclusive, you have to be inclusive for all. And like I say, it's very easy to sit here and yeah, be a minority by being a lesbian, but being able to represent all of those people that should have and be able to see people on the world stage that look like them, I think is just so important. Um, and that's really easy to say, and I think, and you're right, in hockey it's definitely something that you know, needs a lot of work, but I think it goes back to talent pathways and to schools, to universities. There's so much that needs to be done in order to make sport and elite sport truly inclusive.
No, to be fair to the women's hockey team, they've been quite, again, I guess, say, outspoken about certain issues. And one interesting thing was that you decided as a squad or as a team to be able to wear shorts as well as skirts. Now, we've had this conversation. I would feel weird not wearing skirts because I feel like it's like my costume. But you opted with the shorts. So tell us about that process and what that also means to women and girls playing the sport at a lower level.
Yeah, I think, like you say, I think some people put on a score and it feels like a match day, and that continues to be the feeling for probably about half the team, I would say, at GB. You'll notice that, yeah, in Paris, I think half of us wore shorts, half of us wore skirts, and to be able to have that choice is so important. And I think it's quite nice that almost half of us did you know, did either or, because for people watching, it doesn't matter what, you know, what you wear. It's about what you feel comfortable in, and that will allow you to, well, both enjoy but also to perform. You know, Tess, who headed up, you know, this incredible campaign, did a wonderful job with England hockey as well to, you know, allow people from all backgrounds to wear whatever they needed to wear, to you know, headscarves and tights and long sleeved, in order to feel comfortable to play sport. And so, and those rules are, it sounds baffling that needs to be changed, but they did, and it's brilliant that they have been, because it will make the sport more inclusive.
I mean, from your perspective as well, being a female athlete, you know, you've kind of gone through all the pathways in Wales where, you know, I'm just trying to think now, unless you're a women's rugby player, you can't earn a living playing sport in Wales. I'm just wondering about how you feel about how the equality is still or not still there within being an elite athlete and being female as well, and the challenges.
I think I kind of to and fro with this, feeling really proud and glad that things are changing when I see WRU handing out 30-hour contracts to rugby. And then having to stop myself and thinking, well, yes, we are catching up with something that should have been there years ago. So I do kind of to and fro with both, but I think ultimately celebrating how far we've come whilst absolutely asking for more. And that's where we should be at. And I think football and rugby will pave the way in that naturally, and hopefully other sports will follow.
Do you feel quite lucky in a way playing hockey, because it's actually like traditionally a female sport? Obviously, you have the men's team, and I know there's issues. The men players, especially in Europe, get paid more, and in England. But do you feel that there is equality kind of in your sport, or is there a long way to go still?
I think, as with everything, you could say yes. It's like when they said that, there was as many female athletes competing in Paris as there's always a but, isn't there? So yes, we are equal in the sense that we receive the same funding from UK sport. In fact, we receive slightly more because we've medalled more than the men. So that funding is the same in terms of what we get to play hockey as a full-time job. However, as with everything with sport, the funding for sponsorship, for appearances, and also notably for club hockey is vastly different. So it's like, yes, we are equal, but here are the caveats, which I'd say is the same for most things. But those things are changing. And like I say, I think it's about having the confidence to ask for more and making a stand. I play for a club, and one of the main reasons that I came was because I know that they pay the same for the women and the men. That's really important to me. And I know, the women in my team feel the same.
I mean, how does it feel then when you hear, alleged allegations of sexism within the Welsh Rugby Union? How does that, as an elite athlete who's been in a performance environment, how does that make you feel?
I think, well, there's really positive things to take away from the WRU, offering out contracts. I think, that this will put them on the world stage to compete, hopefully, with the likes of England, Canada, those that are doing the really heavy lifting. And so I think what it demonstrates is that Wales rugby do want to make that shift in being able to compete, and the athletes are rightly wanting more. And isn't it fantastic to be in a situation where we're doing that? I think there will be a lot of learnings from that situations internally, and obviously we don't know the details exactly of what happened, but I think hopefully they will review and understand that the women will ask for more, and rightly so. And I hope that it isn't because of sexism, and it is just because perhaps they didn't quite get the conversations right. Yeah, and we will wait to see.
And we fight another day. Well, what is next for you now? Obviously, you're still playing for Wales. What's on the Wales calendar?
The Wales so next year we will play in our Europeans. So and like a full circle moment, that is in Poland, where I played my first Europeans many moons ago.
Not in the left thirds this time, Sarah.
Not in the left thirds, no. So hopefully that will be I think probably a nice way to sign off a pretty long international career. So that's what's next for Wales.
Well, 188 caps. You're not tempted to try and go for 200 combined?
I've said to Kev, who's our head coach, if you could just squeeze in 12 caps before I leave, that would be really great. But we'll see.
And off the pitch, obviously now unfortunately you have to find a job like the rest of us. Now you're back being, a normal person. What's your kind of ambitions there?
I think something within high performance sport. It's something that that I'm really passionate about, and to be honest, something that feels like a privilege to work in. And it's also something that I feel like I have a huge amount to offer in. It's the skill set that I now have, and fantastically, it's now a genuine career choice, which it probably wasn't 10 or 15 years ago. So there's some really exciting roles and organizations out there. So yeah, I think sticking within the high performance environment is where I'll be at.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure that you'll be snapped up by several people. Listen, I'm going to end with a quote that Great Britain Hockey said about you. There was a lot, but the key lines: "You were an outstanding trainer, but we will miss her character too." But luckily for us, we won't miss you too much because you're going to be around more, hopefully, and being part of more events with Cymru women's sport. But no, it's been fascinating to hear your journey, Sarah, and thank you for everything that you've done for hockey in Wales and beyond.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Beth.
Right, now we'll take it to the floor. Have we got any questions? I can't see people. Let me have a look, change my view. Unmute yourself if you do.
So we haven't had any in the chat yet, but if people want to come off mute themselves.
Hi, folks. Do you mind if I ask a question?
Oh, go ahead, Adam.
Great, thank you. So, really fascinating insight, guys, and it's always brilliant to hear from an elite athlete. I kind of want to explain why I'm a bloke on this call, if that's okay.
Anyone can join this call. Come on.
Okay, that's good. That's a relief. So yeah, I'm Adam. I'm a geneticist actually, but I founded a company called Genetics. This isn't a business pitch. It will provide some context to the question, I promise. So we are a testing company that taps into your circadian rhythm to tell you when in the day you're at your best. So when your body is ready to perform, basically. So we're working with elite athletes at the moment and defining a training window. And that's to enhance their performance, but also to enhance their recovery as well. And there's evidence out there that says if your body works out at that particular time, there's less risk of injuries. So we've been working with Cardiff City women, actually, and saw that the timing of this 3-hour training window changes throughout the menstrual cycle. So with one athlete in particular, their training window was 9 to 12 on day 3 of their menstrual cycle, but that changed to 4 till 6 at day 21 in their cycle. So a huge variation across, your monthly biology, as I'm sure you would expect. But we're in this position now. Of course, we're a commercial enterprise, but we want to answer these questions and address these concerns of more research needed in understanding menstrual cycle and how that can be applied in elite sports. But I'm just wondering, given both of your experiences really, and to help us understand, what barriers do you think are there that exist in the culture, in the business of elite sports, that might preclude our knowledge and our understanding from the basic research into that being practically applied at the elite level?
Sarah.
Right. Yeah, I think what you just said there, Adam, practically applied was the first thing that came to mind when you started talking, and it sounds absolutely fascinating. My first thought, as someone that comes from a team sport, and obviously you're working with Cardiff City Women, is that and it's something that has been brought up when our menstrual cycle's been looked into, is that you are combining the menstrual cycles of 35, I don't know how many women you're working with, and it is already logistically difficult, on a full-time program to when things work, when recovery days, meetings, gym, pitch sessions, when all those things happen, when you take into the individuality of a menstrual cycle, and trying to graph that alongside other people's, I imagine is something that I'm sure you've thought about, is hugely challenging. It's definitely something that must be fascinated within an individual sport. I'm thinking something like cycling, that must be really, really important. That would be I immediately went operational, logistical thought, which is very boring. But that would be my first thought within a team environment.
Yeah, that's great. Sorry.
Yeah, just really quickly, just from speaking to loads of athletes, especially in Wales, is that there's so many barriers before you kind of reach those 1%. So financial barriers, it's like turning up, you haven't got a physio. So whilst again, it sounds amazing, and it's gone are the days of marking it on a calendar. I think you've got to accept that in Wales we are so behind the norms of England, in terms of just having that ability to relax and be able to train first of all, and then adding on all these 1%. But yeah, definitely keep in touch with this, and be interesting maybe to speak to you in the future.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, yeah, we're molecular geneticists, so we literally live in the lab. So to have that sort of insights and to learn how our knowledge could be practically applied in the sports market, that's that's key learnings for us. So yeah, thank you for your insights. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Right then. We've got another question in the chat from Steve. And if you're still there, Steve, if you want to come and ask the question. If not, I'll ask it. Okay, so with all your experience, Sarah, if you could go back in time, what would you tell 10-year-old Sarah Jones who was starting off on her sporting journey?
What a lovely question. Not that the genetics one wasn't. God, I think it would be something around confidence, and understanding and believing in your strengths, and ultimately the reason that you started in the first place. That is something that I often tell kids that are worried about why they didn't get into such and such squad. I try and it's so easy to say now, isn't it? But to remember why you started, because that's probably also what you're good at. And try and do that every time that you play, whatever you play, or whatever you do, because that will mean that you enjoy it and that you're doing your strengths. And I think there is definitely something around always just trying to take in as much as possible. There's something to learn from every situation that you're ever in. I'm now playing, club hockey, and I look at individuals there and I think, oh, like, she does that. What could I learn from that? The coach has said that. What could I do? So there's always opportunities to learn. So confidence, strengths, always be learning.
Great answer.
That wasn't one thing, was it, Steve? So, but yeah.
Right, has anyone else got any other questions? I don't think Steve can hear me, but he's replied. That was a good answer. I've got a question for you, Sarah. So of coming women's sport, some of the things that we're aiming to do, obviously, is to break down some of the barriers for women and girls in sport. What do you think, especially for young girls at the moment, what's the biggest barrier for girls playing sport at the moment, and how do we tackle that as a nation? It's a big question, but it's always good to get different people's insights.
I think a huge one is confidence. We know women of all ages are less confident than men in sport across Wales. And I think what I would say about that is, and whilst I absolutely advocate for hockey and for all organised sport, I think doing something active that makes you happy, whatever that may be, is key. Because that can also be the starting blocks to doing something else as well. My mum does yoga every single day. She sends me the link to the yoga thing that she's done every single day. I've never done it, but she sends it to me every single day. And it's so important to her well-being and her mental health. I think, now in schools, we're seeing the growth of dance classes and yoga, and not, making girls go outside and play tennis if they don't want to. A lot of us have got a lot of baggage from a lot of sports that we were made to do in schools. And so I think just getting young girls to do something that they want to do that is active, and I think outside, because that's quite nice, is probably the most important thing. I'd also say that we know that women are less likely to want to do things on their own. They want to do things in groups. And so I would encourage people to do things that have some, and it doesn't need to be a team sport, obviously that's what I love, but to do things with other girls or women. And those two things kind of go together quite nicely: build confidence and do things in groups. And lots of things organizations are set up to do that now, and there's so many like free taster sessions and stuff like that. But sometimes I walk into a gym and I look at a piece of equipment and I think, oh, don't know how to use that, so I'm not going to use it. Imagine what that must be like for someone that's never walked into a gym before. So I think making things as accessible as possible and just giving any opportunities, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's getting those endorphins going, and putting a smile on your face.
Lovely answer. Anyone else? Roll up, roll up. or forever hold your, wherever the saying is. We've got a lovely message here from Caris. Hi, Sarah. I used to live next door to your mum and I've enjoyed watching your career and I want to wish you all the very best for your future, Caris. And isn't that just a lovely thing that, you know, Caris, who lived next door to your mum, could say to people, I know her, she's at the Olympics. And that's what I'm talking about, the power of sport.
She used to knock on the door and ask me to probably get her kids to play football. That's probably why she remembers me. Sorry, Caris, for being annoying.
Right, I think that's it. But an amazing insight, Sarah. I really, really enjoyed that. And listen, please keep in touch. Let us know when you're down in Wales. We'd love to have you at an event soon. And looking forward to seeing what's next on your amazing journey. So thank you very much to everyone who's come today. Look out for our next Lynn, who is one of the Wales's biggest supporters.
Hello.
We've got to say a shout out to Lynn. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, and hopefully we'll do more of these. And yeah, and hopefully try and grow the positivity of women and girls sport in Wales. So yeah, thank you again to Emma for organising, and everyone have a lovely, lovely Thursday.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Beth.
Bye all. Take care. Thank you, Lynn.
Bye.
Bye.